This is our skill building strategies for youth. And we're going to be discussing several different things around our work with youth with disabilities through our Youth Readiness Day. All right, so my name is Joey Ellis, and I'm the Family and Youth Educator and Mentor and the Post-Secondary Transition Specialist for STEP, Support and Training for Exceptional Parents. We are Tennessee's Parent Training and Information Center, as you guys do the same type of work here. And I'm going to be co-presenting with Ned Solomon. He is our Communication Support Specialist. He also was previously with I'll let him introduce himself when he gets on. But we did a lot of work in partnership together through our Youth Readiness Days. We're going to be discussing that. Okay, so this is our mission statement. So you'll see that our mission statement really does emphasize youth. So it states STEP's mission is to serve families of children and youth and adults and those who are involved in their lives. We provide accurate, timely, relevant information and training related to special education rights, equal access, quality education, and connections to community resources. We know that families and youth who are informed, empowered, and engaged can effectively collaborate as a team for services and supports that will lead to improved outcomes and success in life. So I know that with the work that we do, originally it really centered around families, but the focus really has shifted. A lot of the focus really has shifted to youth. So we've made sure that we put that into our mission statement, the work that we do. Okay. All right. So the expectations and agreements for today. So these are just a few things to remember while we're on the Zoom call. Obviously we're in a different type situation now with the whole COVID thing. So you could please help us by raising your hand with the raise hand option if you have a question. You can ask clarification on questions anytime. We want you to keep questions and comments very concise because we do have a limited amount of time. Keep questions and comments, keep questions and comments concise. Save other questions and global comments for the end. And leave your camera on. So if you've got like a really big question that has a lot of layers to it, please feel free to reach out to myself or to Ned Andrew. We'll make sure that you have all of our contact information. But if you have a question that we can answer pretty quickly, please feel free to ask that in the chat box. Okay. So today we're going to be exploring several things. We're going to be looking at the learning to speak up, the importance of self-advocacy. And that really gets, when we're doing a Youth Readiness Day with youth, we usually do this in school systems, churches, different things like that. And we get several youth together. We've also done this virtually as well. And we usually start out with that activity, learning to speak up, and it really gets them engaged at the very beginning. The second thing we're going to be discussing is our reality check, independent living skills, and how to adult, okay? And really getting the participants' mind around what it really takes to be independent, okay? The next thing we're going to be discussing is the budgeting for life activity that we do. Now, this activity really gets students really thinking about what it takes to make a budget and be able to understand, the value of a dollar. And it's really an eye-opening experience for students. Next, we're going to be getting into work.
Oh, and Joey, your presenter has joined.
Excellent. Okay. All right. Ned, are you there?
I believe I am here. I am so sorry. I was in a different session for some strange reason.
So Ned, do you want to go ahead and introduce yourself?
So I am Ned Solomon. I am in charge of communication supports for STEP. and which is the support and training for exceptional parents in Tennessee, RPTI. And I am the father of 4 children, 3 of which have developmental disabilities, and retired recently from the state of Tennessee, where I was the director of the Partners in Policymaking for the Tennessee Council on Developmental Disabilities.
All right. So Ned, I was just in the middle of what we're going to explore today. So workplace readiness really talks about getting students ready to be able to be on time and focused in their work. We talk about hard skills and soft skills. The next thing we're going to be discussing is our dream building activity. And this is where we really start talking about what's important to our youth and what's important for our youth. And we'll just explain what that really means when we get to it. It's really about future planning. The next thing is what's out there to help me. This really ties it all together, and there's several resources that we share with our youth. The next thing we're going to be discussing is our one-page profiles, talking about what makes a good day and bad day for our youth. And then we're going to be talking about how we engage families with our family evening transition institutes, and also engaging and recruiting youth in the work that we do. And then we're going to finish it all up with the lessons that we've learned, both successes and challenges that we faced while we've started to do this work. We were able to work with around 1,100 youth. Is that correct, Ned? Last year?
Yes.
So definitely we learned a lot. We've made a lot of changes, and we're always looking to make this a better experience for everybody involved.
Absolutely. And so one of the things we wanted to do for you today was to walk you through what a typical youth training day would look like for us, that we typically call a youth readiness and dream building day. So this is a special day that is set aside from the students' regular curriculum. In the best of circumstances, we try to hold these events in another place so it feels different to the students, and it makes them feel like they're getting something that's unique and worthy. And when we kick off our program, we talk about the importance of self-advocacy. And one of the things we do is we talk to them about the importance of learning to speak up for themselves and for others in their lives. And we begin this by actually throwing them into the fire and having each of them come up to the front of the room and face their peers and the few adults that might be there, and tell us their name, what they're passionate about, and why they're passionate about that. So they can't just say football and then go and sit down. They actually have to come up with a sentence that describes why they're passionate about it. So we are going to ask a couple of brave souls at this very start of the conference to just demonstrate this. Give us an introduction by saying what your name is, what you're passionate about, and why you're passionate about this thing. Do we have someone willing to do that? And you could just turn off your mic and start, I think.
Yeah.
Okay, I'll speak up first. My name is Marion Campbell, and I'm passionate about helping parents and youth. And the reason I am passionate is because I have a child myself with disabilities, and I have fought for him. So it empowers me to fight for others.
Fantastic. That was perfect. Exactly what we'd be looking for. Do we have one more volunteer, please?
Hi, my name is Adam, and the reason why I'm passionate about
Wait, first tell us, Adam, thank you for introducing yourself. What are you passionate about?
I'm sorry about that.
No problem.
I am passionate about sharing my personal experiences around
Awesome.
transition and professional. And the reason is because I really want to leave my mark for the next generation. I do have a disability myself, a physical disability, and I want them to know that they could do anything. They could work at a parent center. They could dream even bigger than that.
Well, that's fantastic, Adam. Thank you so much. Miriam, thank you so much. So, two brave souls. And so generally what we would do is every single student that was participating in this event would come up in turn and do this. And then Joey would give them an opportunity to have a gift for getting up and speaking up for themselves. And so during the course of the event, we have multiple times when we have a prompt that they have to come up, again, state their name facing their peers, say what it is that satisfies the prompt, and then they get to pick a different little prize. We're talking about things that we buy at the general store, nothing very expensive, but they really enjoy that aspect of it. And it reinforces throughout the entire day that they are speaking up for themselves and stating what's important to them.
Right.
Thank you. The second part of our training is we talk about reality check, so learning to adult. And we ask the youth to tell us what they think a reality check is. We often don't get an answer. But one of the teachers might say, that's when, reality really hits you, when all of those things that you've been dreaming about or thinking might be possibility, we're so glad you're doing that, but what have you thought about to put in place to make that a reality? And this is a very, very interactive session where we want them to talk about what they are doing independently, what they are trying to become more independent in doing, and lastly, if they do need support for something, or if they're always going to need support for something, they need to recognize that and then figure out how those supports are going to be presented. Joey, do you have an opportunity to share?
Yeah, I'm going to try to share this.
Thank you.
1 second. Okay. Can you see that?
Yes, there's something right in front of it, but yes, perfect. So this is an example of one of our reality check independent checklists, and in the left-hand column, the tasks for adulting, what things people would have to do if they were either on their own or trying to be more independent, things that adults typically are expected to be able to do. So that task is in the left-hand column. The second column is something they can check and say, this is great, I already do this myself. The second column is, I'm working on being able to do this independently. And the third column is, I will need support completing this task. And so we talk about waking up by themselves in the morning, making breakfast for themselves, getting to school or work on time, doing their laundry. So there are a number of tasks, and it is a conversation that we have with the youth. One of the anecdotes I'm going to tell you quickly is we asked a youth to tell us who does their own laundry, and this one youth very enthusiastically raised their hand, and I said, oh, please tell me how you do your laundry. And that person said, well, first, my mom comes into my room and she gets all my dirty clothes, and then she puts it into the washer, and then she runs it through the washer, and after it's done in the washer, she puts it in the dryer, and after it's done in the dryer, she folds it and puts it on top of the dryer, and then I come and get it and put it in my drawers. And so our response to that would have been, we have a reality check for you. Guess what? You're not doing your laundry. Okay. And so we talk to them about reality, and we kind of make up this situation where their parents have changed the locks on their house and they're living by themselves, and they've spent the last 5 years, 15, 20 years of their lives being woken up by somebody in the morning? What happens if that person's not living with them anymore?
Mhm.
And what happens, what are the consequences if they're late for work? So this is a great thing that we do in person. It can be adapted in any way to cover whatever tasks, opening an account, um, doing a job interview, any number of things that you really want to be working on with your youth.
All right. Cool. There we go. Okay. So the next activity we're going to be discussing is our budgeting for life activity, and this is really an eye-opening experience. And just to let you know, when we first started doing this, I actually got an opportunity to present this to about 400 teachers in the state of Tennessee, just at a teacher conference. And all of them were like, I need this for my classroom. And honestly, I need this for my own life as an adult. So, you know, I'm sure that a lot of us at 17, 18 years old, if we were asked to budget our money, it would be a challenge. And that's no different for a student with a disability. And they need to know this information, and it's vitally important. But we've actually made this into a very interactive activity where students can make choices and really decide what they want out of their life. And I'm going to stop share real quick and show you um, some of these activities here. Okay. Okay. So what you see here is like everybody chooses a career, and then the career will have a salary already on it. And this is a post-tax salary that's averaged out. We've done this activity in person. We've also done this activity virtually. So I mean, there's multiple ways you can do this. So if you send these cards to students, then they can potentially do this virtually as well. So they'll choose a career, and then we will go through, you know, what type of food are you gonna shop for food, or are you gonna just,
Can I just mention, you might know this, but everything's sideways?
yeah, I'm not real sure how to get
Okay, okay.
so, but we do have this available, you know, if you guys are interested. But this just to show you, you're going to throw everything into a cart, or you're going to shop with a budget, and then when they go through all of this, they can determine if they've got enough money at the end of the month. And we've done this activity where, you know, they'll choose the nicest house, the fanciest car. They're going to go out to eat every day, and then, you know, they're like, oh wait, I have no money, right? So
The biggest internet package and the latest phone.
right. So then we have to talk with them about, okay, what are you going to have to scale back on? Or maybe you want to choose a different career. Now, all of the careers that are in this are careers that can be achieved with or without a high school diploma. So even if a student goes to, you know, a trade school or something of that nature, they can get these types of jobs. And it's not, you know, we've had some students say, you know, my career choice isn't on here, and they can advocate for, you know, for some change there. And we have updated this some as it relates to that. But we also just say, you know, hey, this is just to get you kind of thinking about what it takes to um, to budget your money, right?
Yeah.
And it really is an eye opener. So I'm going to share again. And then the next part of this, this is actually Ned's favorite part. Um, he gets to be around and go around and throw out life's little surprises, right? So we know that things happen that are beyond our control. So surprise, your utility bills have increased by $200 this year. Well, that comes out of your budget, right?
Well,
Okay.
and can I just say quickly, Joey? So once they've made all those choices about the utilities and their phone and their career and all that stuff, they add up their money and they see whether they're in the black and the red. And then they have a certain amount that they are either have saved or are in the hole. And then we throw them these little surprises, which can be significant.
Surprise, you got sick. Surprise, your car needs a repair. All these things happen, right? But then there's good things that happen too. So surprise, you've earned a bonus at work, $500, and that gets added to their budget, right? Surprise, you got a raise worth $1,200 this year. Surprise, you got a gift card worth $200. So it just depends on, what they get. And so, we've also had students that had a lot of surplus, and we get to talk to them about, savings accounts and retirement, and being generous. Maybe they want to donate to a charity or something like that. So we get to talk with them about that as well. Okay. So the next thing I want to show you is workplace readiness, getting and maintaining a job. So we all know that, getting a job, while that may be somewhat difficult, sometimes keeping the job is even more difficult, right? So we talk to them about the differences between hard skills and soft skills. So hard skills being what it takes to actually do the job. So if you're going to be a construction worker, you need to know, what tools are needed for a specific job. If you're going to work at a cash register, you need to know, how to count out money and different things like that. But what gets a lot of people are those soft skills, being on time, interacting with coworkers and your boss. If you have a problem, who do you go to and how do you handle that? So we talk with them about that. We also do an activity that gets them up and moving, because we like for it to be interactive, where we have them stand back to back, and then they'll turn around and ask their partner, what makes you awesome? And why are you employable? And they get to share that out. And each partner shares about the other partner. So we find this really engaging for students that maybe they're a little bit shy, and maybe they've never really talked about what they're good at. And that really kind of tears down some barriers. A lot of times after that activity, our students get a lot more engaged because they got to talk about themselves.
And we tell them this is your opportunity to actually to brag on yourself.
Exactly. Um, we talk about what you're really good at, what you would like to learn to do, what job would you enjoy doing, what job would drive you crazy. So like for me, retail is not a good plan, right? So like standing for 8 hours a day, working at retail would be awful for me. So, we don't want our students to get in jobs that they can't stand. So, what do you do when you get in a situation where you're in a job that you're not really cut out for? And how do we, leave, on good standing with 2 weeks notice, or, things like that? What types of jobs do you really want to do, and how to get education that gets you in a good place for that job.
Or training, yeah.
Right. Okay. So I did want to show you real quick our transition guide on employment. So I'm going to do that real fast. And that's not it. I will get to it. Okay. So this is our transition guide for employment. And again, this is on our website, tnstat.org. You can access that. There's a strapping young lad on the front, if you know. That's me, much, much younger. It was about 10 years ago. I had just started with STEP. But we talk about hard skills and soft skills. Think about your first appearance. Are you dressed for success? Make good use of your time. There's various tips there. We talk about he does a great job, but he's, if your boss is saying he does a great job, but that's usually a negative thing. So like if you're not showing up on time, that may be a problem. If you get in arguments with your coworkers, that could be a problem. But we also talk about he does a great job because, or he does a great job and. So that's more positive. So he does a great job because he loves the customers, or she does a great job because she's always on time and
Yeah.
willing to help, right? So we talk about those differences. And we have them rate their soft skills. And we don't necessarily have them answer, just in their mind. What could we be working on? And then there is some resources for how to get gainful employment. And so this is Tennessee specific. So you could potentially do this in your own center and make it specific to your own state. Okay, I'll stop share again. Okay.
So the next thing we do is an activity called dream building, which is all about planning your near and far future. I wanted to take a moment here and say that in the whole scheme of this event, we're trying to be as interactive and change up the variety of what we're offering the youth to keep it interesting. So the budget game and the dream building game are both made up of cards that are laminated, and they're high quality. The photos are nice on them. They have big, large print on them. And we're talking to them about what's going to be important to them to do in their lives. We describe to them the difference between important to and important for. So we know that important to is the things that are generally the things that we want in our life, right? And that may be very different for someone who is an 11th grader as opposed to someone who's 20 or 30 years old. Important for usually those things that our teachers or our parents or other people in authority relationships in our lives think that we need to have, like health and safety and taking your meds on a regular basis, things like that, that really might have a significant impact in your life, whether you do or don't do them. But generally youth are not thinking about that. So it has to kind of be a mixture of what's important to me and what's for me. So Joey's put up some of those cards. So these are examples of the high quality laminated cards that we give them. If we're doing this event in person, we usually have 4 or 5 youth at a table, and they have to come to consensus through these 60 or 65 cards that they're shuffling through. The 5 cards that they feel are the most important things to have in their lives as they become responsible adults. And I think what most of you might be surprised at is how frequently they pick very responsible things that they recognize that in order for them to be successful and to be on a positive trajectory in their lives, these are the things that they need to have. And so we also give them the opportunity to pick one card for themselves. It's a personal card that wasn't necessarily come to consensus by the group, but that's something that they really want to have. It really feels important to them. And we have done this virtually, where we've sent the youth printouts of these sheets. In some cases, we've sent a pack of the cards. And so the youth can be looking at it as we work with them. It all depends on the resources that are available and what kind of time commitment we have.
And also say that when we do these activities, each teacher will get a classroom set of all the materials that we provide, so they can then kind of build on what we've talked about over the course of the day. So it's not just it's an ongoing thing. So we've heard stories of students actually using these in their IEP meetings as part of their transition plan.
Right.
So it's been really
Right.
helpful.
Well, that's a great thing to stress, Joey, and you're so good about that, is, they may identify something in their life that's important to them through this youth training that we do, and then Joey helps them realize how that can be incorporated into their IEP transition plan.
And a lot of times they don't even know what the transition plan looks like. So it's an
Until that day.
for a lot of students.
Right.
So it's really fantastic. Okay. So this next slide is what's out there to help me. And this is where we kind of bring it all together. Okay. I actually had a student one time when we got done with this, and he said, he was 17, and he said, Mr. Ellis, I thought that when I graduated that it was all on me, that that there was nothing out there, that I had to go find it all myself. And so what we've done here is all of this information you see on the slide, we've put into a booklet, and I'm about to share that with you as well.
We call it a handbook for them.
It's a yes. Sorry about that. Let me share again. Sorry. All right. Oh, there it is. Okay. So this is, again, Tennessee specific, but you can make this into something that is state specific for your area.
And this handbook is Tennessee specific, but the PowerPoint slide are all
Right.
state that you do have.
So we first start with vocational rehabilitation services, and that's listed there. And they have contact information for that. We talk about Project Search, American Job Centers, all of that's in this handbook for them. Several universities within the state and contact information, community colleges, College of Applied Technology, that's a trade school in the area. Tennessee, and all of those locations are listed. So there's a lot of information here.
Post-secondary programs for students with intellectual disabilities. Yeah.
Right. ECF choices. All that information is there. And then if this is all just too overwhelming, we have our contact as well, right? So, if they're having trouble navigating all this, then, they can give us a call and we can help them with that. So,
I'm sorry, Joey, and we also encourage them to go over this with their families,
Right.
and that if their families want to get in touch with us, then absolutely, we're happy to take those calls.
And we get a lot of calls after a day like this. So again, you can take this type format and make it your state specific if you'd like. I'll stop share again. Okay.
But as I said, all of those resources are throughout the country. The last major activity we do, again interactively, is a one-page profile. There's a woman named Helen Sanderson who has created an entire website that are filled with these one-page profiles. So there are numerous ways for this to be done. But basically, it's a snapshot. We talk about it like it's kind of a resume, but it's a snapshot of what we need to know about this individual, and whether that's because they're going for a job, whether it's a parent of a kid with a young child who's leaving their child with a babysitter, or an aftercare program at school, or a new teacher. Anytime they're entering a new experience, and there are some important things that we want that individual or that program to know about the child or the adult. And a lot of the folks that we work with disabilities don't necessarily have a typical resume where they have a career history or even possibly a post-secondary education history. So we get them to list out their skills. Okay, what is it that they're good at doing? And their attributes. When people say nice things about them, what do they typically say? What's important to them to have in their day? Sometimes it may be, I want to be near where my friends are. I want to be able to go to a place of worship. So I need to live in a town that has a place of worship that, for my denomination. Important for them. It's important for me. So I did mine here to show them. I'm writing and editing are some of my skills. I take deadlines seriously. That's one of my attributes. I feel like I have a good sense of humor. It's important to me to work in a quiet environment with instrumental music. It's important for me, I know, that to have a job that pays my bills and provides my family with benefits. I identify what makes a good day for me. So a good day is iced coffee being prepared the night before. You can't just have iced coffee, right? It starts with hot coffee. So a bad day for me would be iced coffee was not prepped the night before, and I'm just sitting there with hot coffee, which I typically don't drink. And then I have my support needs. So I never did well in math. I was an English guy. And so help with math is a problem. I happen to be married to someone who's very good at math. So we benefit each other. But those are important support needs to know, because math goes into bookkeeping, balancing your checkbook, those kinds of things. And so the students have an opportunity to identify these things about their lives and then create it into a one-page profile that has their picture. It might have another image or a graphic that they identify with, but they're presenting this to an employer or someone that they haven't dealt with before. Now, when we worked at the Project Search programs, they loved this tool, and they wound up making one up for each of the youth. And as they did their rounds in their different internships, they brought those to the people that were in charge of their internships, and it wound up being a very successful tool for them.
And we've actually done this as a staff at our staff retreats so that we get to know who we're working with and how to best support them. So, I mean, we've even had adults say, you know, they're going to go home and do this with their significant other or their spouse. So it's not just for students, although this is a very popular activity and really eye-opening for everybody that does it.
Well, one time we did this where during the lunch break, we put up sticky notes on the walls, because if youth were having a hard time coming up with what their skills or their positive attributes were, we actually had all of the other students write something on each of the sticky notes pertaining to a particular student, saying, this is what I like about Kevin, or this is what I like about Anne Marie. And then those people were able to incorporate those into their own one-page profiles.
And that's a really great way to adapt the activity, because sometimes, you know, again, students aren't used to bragging on themselves, or maybe they don't want to just throw everything out there. So it's a good way to get everybody actively contributing to it.
And moving around again.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
Absolutely. So this next slide really talks about how do we take the information that we've provided to these students and make sure that they utilize it to help them get where they want to be. So this slide is all about Family and Youth Evening Transition Institute. So often we were able to do a full day youth readiness day with all of this great information, interactive information. And then we would have an evening session where youth and their families could come, and we would allow students to share what they've learned over the course of the day. and really make it about them. And then
They were the stars. They become the stars of the evening.
the show, and they love that, right? Um, so we also bring in panelists that work for different agencies and disability services offices, and they can give a brief description of what they do so that families can put a face with the name for different agencies that might be of assistance. And that really ties into that what's out there to help me.
And we pull those people from the exhibits that open up the evening. So someone there is representing a particular agency, and then we ask that person to come sit on a Q&A panel.
Right. So all of this to say is, you know, the students get excited about it, and now we need to get the families excited about it too. And that really ties it together. So I had the honor of serving on the State Rehabilitation Council that advises vocational rehabilitation services with the state of Tennessee. And I actually roll off of that in September. But I was in a meeting, and we were at the local Tennessee Rehabilitation Center, which is a place where people can go and get job training. And I was getting a Diet Coke. I don't know if any Diet Coke fans out there, but you know, that's me. So I'm getting a Diet Coke, and I hear this voice in the back, and she said, "I know you. You came to my school in Greenville, Tennessee," and I was in Murfreesboro. This is about 5 hours away from Greenville, Tennessee. And she said, "You came to my school. I learned about TRC. I went, and my parents came to the evening portion, and now she was studying to be a pharmacy technician, right? So she really learned about it through that event, and this event, the evening thing, evening event, really tied it together for the family so that they understood that yes, this is out there, and it really was a fantastic moment to know that the work that we were able to do made a positive impact. Because as you guys know, sometimes this work, you may not know the positive impact right away. So I hope that you get this type of experience if you were able to do this type of work.
Yep. Just a quick thing. We provide food and beverages at these family events. And during the day, our 4 or 5 hour Youth Readiness Day, there is a lunch that is provided plus snacks to break up the day. So food, always a plus.
It gets them there, especially with the youth. You know, if there's pizza involved, usually they're in. And usually with these evening events, they're, 5 or 6 o'clock. So families are just getting off work. So if you can feed them, they will come, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
We wanted to talk a little bit about engaging and recruiting youth. So when we're talking about trying to interact with youth on their level and as part of their world, we really try to speak their language. Youth and youth with disabilities are no exception, are very, very sensitive to being talked down to. And so we never, ever treat them any differently than we would treat another adult. Because once they lose that trust, once they realize that you're not being authentic with them or you're not seeing them on an eye-to-eye level, then you've kind of lost them. So our flyers that we give out are visually interesting. They have as many graphics as they do text. We keep our sessions very short. We typically do like a 50-minute session with a 10-minute break for each hour. Just mentioned, snacks and beverages break up the day. They're excited when they get to those. We often get several youth who practice leadership by volunteering to be the ones who hand out the pizza or the snacks, which is awesome. We've talked throughout this presentation about keeping the activities varied and interactive, change them up as much as possible, get the youth moving. And we are offering topics that impact them now. So, employment, living more independently, those kinds of things are things that are right on the cusp of what's going to happen when their lives start changing and the bus stop's coming or they stop having that daily school routine. Joey, did you want to talk about the recruiting youth part?
Yeah, so with recruiting youth, again, Ned really talked about making sure that you are relatable. And I think that's really huge in building that trust. So, when recruiting, we talk about going where the youth are. We do a lot of transition fairs in high schools. We do a lot of youth conferences, and we partner with a lot of agencies that already work with youth. Um, we want to make sure, again, we go where they are, and when we're engaging them in conversation, we're not talking over them, and that can be difficult sometimes, especially when a parent's right there. So if I'm talking with the youth and their parent is there, I want to make sure that I'm focusing on them, I'm making eye contact with them, and then you definitely want to be social media savvy. We do have our social media outlets that we advertise through. And then we often will offer, certain tracks at conferences that's strictly for you. So you may have a parent session or a youth session. So, and they
Or
run
a whole
concurrent,
track? Yeah.
and they run concurrently. So it really shows that this is about them. And because a lot of youth, they think that a lot of times they'll think that this type of activity, we don't want them to think that they're a third wheel to this.
Exactly.
We want them to be fully engaged in this work.
So quickly, just run through a few lessons learned. We often see possibilities where other teachers or even the youth's own parents don't see that. We have tried to keep our expectations high. We have common feedback from teachers and administrators is we are telling them the same thing, but having you come in and underlying these concepts and these principles makes it that much powerful. Anytime we can have an anecdote that a student introduces themselves and the things that are going on in their lives personally is so powerful. And it encourages the other youth to share about their lives as well. We want the adults to stop doing everything for them, whether that's the parent or the teacher. So we kind of subtly step in there and make sure that the youth is the one who's speaking up for themselves and an adult isn't speaking up for them. And if we need some sort of adaptation or accommodation in order for a student to participate in activity, we don't want it automatically to be that the adult in the room is doing it for them. We want to figure out a way that the youth can do it for themselves. And I mentioned during the dream building game, sometimes we're very surprised at the choices that they make and how adult and responsible they are.
And a lot of times towards the end of the day, or even at lunch, we'll do a break. The teachers or the parents are sometimes shocked because they're not used to a certain student being so interactive. And so it really is
right.
about a moment for everyone. I didn't know that, Joey would be so interactive with me.
Right.
Shocking. So
great point.
It does happen a lot.
Yeah.
So, now, do you want to wrap up, or do you want me to?
No, that's fine. We're here. We're at the end of the information we want to share with you, and so we want to provide this opportunity for you to ask us any questions about what we presented or other things that popped into your heads, or just comments is fine too.
Do you mind if I mention a few questions that have been repeatedly coming up?
Please do.
Okay. Number one, raving reviews, fellows. Applause all around.
Thanks.
And
you say that to every presenter.
no, I'm actually just reading it.
Okay.
No, I'm kidding. It was great, and there a lot of people are loving it.
Yay.
But so one thing is, where is this training available? And people are seeing the PowerPoint, both the English and Spanish, on the Whova site, but we're wondering about the other handouts, checklists, flyers, how they can potentially get that.
Joey and my emails are on the next slide. I think they're also in your conference materials. So, you know, I don't know if this is as easy and accessible as you were hoping for, but if any of you email us and want a specific thing, we can absolutely email them to you. Now, in terms of a photo of something, STEP does have and sell versions of the budget game and the dream building game that can be purchased from STEP. Joey, is there a way to make sure that that all of the extra materials that we showed would be available to the conference folks?
Good, because when I was uploading information, I could only upload 3 documents on that. So is there a way I can get that to the conference organizer and then distribute that? Because I know there's several hundred people, so getting several hundred emails for me might not be the best plan.
Yeah, yes, Joey, if you either email it to me, or if Ned wanted to, I know Ned,
Okay.
I'm signing you up for something.
Yeah.
Go into the Whova app. You can upload 3 other documents into it. They're separate than Joey's, but they'll all show up to the participants.
Okay.
So either way, either email them to me or through Whova
Let me just
under Ned.
email them to you because there's more. I think there's more than 3 that we've shown. So
Like 6,
that's
maybe
okay.
5 or 6, yeah.
Right.
And then Joey, are you able to see the chat, or do you want me to read it to you?
Let me. Yeah.
Read
If
it.
you can read it, yeah, that'd be great.
Okay, so there's one question here. Have you as presenters addressed the issue of guardianship? How do you address parents' questions regarding their child losing Social Security?
Okay.
So,
Go ahead, Ned. If you want.
no, I was going to say that we actually, during our Learning to Speak Up for Yourself presentation, have a slide that's specifically about promoting supported decision making. And the main thing that we want to do is make sure that the first thing that they think of when the child turns 18, if that child has a disability, is that they have to have a guardianship or a conservatorship. So we want to stop that conversation. We know that ultimately that might be what works the best for that family, but we want to talk to them about supported decision making in all the ways that are much less restrictive leading up to that. We also talk about that with the families. The SSI, in our book of our handbook that shows our resources, there is a section on applying for SSI.
So what's out there to help me has a complete section on that.
And we would certainly, as a PTI, help any youth or family figure out how to apply for those things.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Are there any questions or comments?
Ladies and gentlemen, if you can type them, I will ask them. If typing is a problem for you and the accommodation would be to speak, please do that as well.
I did see a comment, is the entire curriculum available? And we have our PowerPoints. The beauty, and maybe one of the weaknesses of this, is that so much of this is verbal because it's a conversation with the youth. And so we have our anecdotes that we tell, we have our prompts that we use throughout the day. We are not PowerPoint readers at all. What you saw today is way above what we typically text, what kind of text we put on slides when we're working with youth. I don't know that there have been many times we haven't even used a PowerPoint.
That's true. I've
So over the course of our 5 hours, we are presenting the content that we feel is important to them in those different categories that we said in the beginning, but it's all done through conversation.
Okay. Any other questions? I think I've already got one email through my phone here. So
Yeah, and Joey may not want to get a lot of emails. I'm happy to get emails.
We have a comment question. Hold on. So many things are being said. Hold on. Okay, so for more severely disabled students, have the presenters heard of Extraordinary Ventures in Raleigh?
Yeah.
is that an
It's-
agent?
Is that a program or?
Yes, it appears it's capital. Extraordinary Ventures in Raleigh, North Carolina.
Have not heard of that.
So if you want to email us some more information about it, that you can. I will say that, when working with youth, we are all inclusive. And we've even had situations where they'll, teachers or parents will come in and say, well, my son or daughter needs to be with me or with with their own classroom. We discourage that. We like to make sure that all students are in with other peers, and often what we'll do is we'll identify a peer that is willing to be of assistance. We do not force peers to be assistants, but we look for that natural support.
Well, yeah.
Yeah.
And at the same time, we've had a group where the teacher complained to us that because of the high level of some of the youth at the table, they were being dragged down by the students who weren't as high level, and we had no sympathy for that. We purposely go out of our way to make sure that the students are all mixed in there because that's how they learn from each other.
Right. And it's, that's personal for me. I have a mild form of cerebral palsy. I had an IEP growing up, and so, I know what that's like. And I want to make sure that all youth feel a part of the group and feel engaged. And we want to make sure that we are encouraging that inclusion.
Absolutely.
Okay, have you had much experience presenting this material virtually?
Yeah. Go ahead, Joey.
We've actually, sorry. Go ahead, Ned. I'm kind of coughing a little bit.
Yeah, no, we haven't had lots and lots. So when you're looking at the 1,100 youth we trained, the vast majority of those were in person. We've probably done, 5 or 6, had 5 or 6 opportunities. We did an entire Youth Leadership Academy, which was a 3-day event virtually. And we would send a packet in advance to the youth. So they had the handbook, they had the PowerPoints, they had the prizes that they could open if they were one of the ones who shared at a particular time. And so we tried to make it as hands-on and appealing as possible, even though we were in distance, and it worked really, really well.
It worked really well, and we, in that 3-day time frame, we didn't lose one participant, and they didn't have to be there, and it was during their summer break. They were excited to be there. I've actually also done this with an individual student, and I hear a lot where parent center staff are saying, well, how do we do this? I'm used to working with families. How do we work with youth? For me personally, if I'm on the phone with a parent and I hear that they have a youth or young adult with a disability, they'll say, I've got a 14-year-old. And then I'll go ahead and ask a question about that. It doesn't even matter if that's what the parent was calling about in the first place.
Right.
Run with that issue, and then I'll say, by the way, I heard you mention you had a 14-year-old with a disability, and then I'll mention my title, and that really kind of gets that ball rolling.
How's their transition plan going?
Exactly, and so You know, it really is a eye-opening moment for families. And, you know, sometimes I'll get that conversation when they're 12, 13, 14. Sometimes I'll get that conversation and the student is, you know, 20 years old.
Yeah, yeah.
Either way, we still need to have that conversation. And even if it takes beyond just, you know, when they're in school, we can do that. And so,
And just one more thing about the virtually, we had activities where it was an art activity. We sent art materials in the packet to the youth. We had an activity where someone came and did all of these physical things, whether a person was in a wheelchair or had other mobility issues, and the students were all up and moving around. Even though it was virtual, it was fantastic.
yeah, I think the art to start that that conference, we had them do their own personal flag, and
Right.
they got to draw things that represent them. And some students, we sent them a template. Some people used the template, and some actually did it on, you know, on their computer,
Yep.
whichever way works best for them. And everyone participated with that.
Okay, thank you for those answers. We have about 4 more questions,
Yeah.
and
If you have time, we have time.
we have
Sure.
we have about 8 more minutes. So,
Okay.
do you know of plain language written resources that help youth understand transition topics like Social Security?
What was the last part of that transition?
Oh, resources like Social Security.
Okay.
I was,
Joey?
So I was going to say, we do have our transition guides. And again, the transition guides you can actually get on our website at tnstep.org. And that is several different transition topics. And they're really meant as conversation starters for families and youth, from topics anywhere from supported decision making to self-advocacy to you saw one of them that was employment. I believe there's 8 different topics that have resources there. So feel free to go to the website, check that out, and then you know, if you want to adapt that for your own state, you certainly can.
I think part of the question is the plain language version of it. You know, when we are presenting, we're not handing out high level materials. We are our materials, I feel, are in plain language, and certainly when we're verbally explaining things. I did a presentation on self-advocacy for 30 young adults with Down syndrome, and it was probably the most engaged presentation I've ever done in my life, and I changed very little about how about the content that I delivered.
Awesome. And I think that feeds right into another question of any strategies that you use in supporting youth with more severe disabilities.
Mm-hmm. Joey, I'm going to quickly tell a little bit of the Gina story. We were in East Tennessee, and we had an activity where the youth had to choose between this or that, or, you know, they had to make choices. And this particular child who was nonverbal had an adult with them who was Velcro to them. And anytime a question was asked of the youth, because we always speak directly to the youth, whether they're verbal or not, and the adult would answer for the youth. And Gina, who was also one of our trainers, was really trying to push the issue because we set a set of cards in front of this young lady, and the adult took the cards away and said she won't be able to use those. And Gina took them back, set them back down again, and she actually wrote on pieces of paper, no, yes, maybe. And for every card she flipped over, the child whose cognition, whose receptive skills were absolutely spot on, just made a choice by pointing to the yes, no, or maybe. And so we were able to determine at the end of that activity what she wanted in her life. And the adult was at first a little put off because we kind of showed her that this was something that she hadn't thought of herself. But really, ultimately, she was pretty amazed that she would be able to come up with a communication system that worked well. Joey, did you want
It
to
is
add to
really
that?
just about differentiating instruction. And
Absolutely.
um, so what you just did there with the yes, no, maybe was really just make that accessible. And so, whether it be that, they give answers to someone and then they verbally repeat it or do something like the yes, no, maybe, um, whatever it takes to make that accessible for that student, that's what we're going to do. And sometimes that's on the fly, and that's okay. That's why we do the natural supports. Sometimes we'll get the youth to help out. So, and again, you don't want to force that, but the youth can be the best teachers to their peers sometimes. So.
Absolutely agree with all of that. I don't right now see any additional questions, but I would recommend all of you look through the chat because there have been awesome resources shared, and we all appreciate you sharing those as well. Any final thoughts or final questions from anyone?
A final thought from me is I just want to say thank you so much. And I love the enthusiastic faces and for deciding to come to this session. We're
Thank you
super
guys
thankful.
very much. Again, if you have any questions, please feel free to reach out to myself or Ned Andrew. Emails are listed on the slide right here. And, thank you again.